Johnny, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I'm interested what you're going to say to my first question, actually. What do you make of your season so far? Because it feels a little bit inconsistent, a little bit bitty. You haven't really got up and running yet, but you're doing all right in Champions League. You're in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup, but it still feels like a bit of a stuttering start for Newcastle.
Yeah, I think obviously the summer was dominated by Alexander Isak chat and transfers and who was staying, who was going, what was the situation. And I felt that Newcastle season didn't really start until after the international break, going into that September international break. And even those three games we had where we lost to Liverpool in the last second, we drew with Leeds, we drew with Aston Villa away, which is probably on paper not a bad result, but we were the better team against Aston Villa that first game of the season. They went down to 10 men as well, but we just couldn't see get a goal. Just didn't have a natural goal scorer. And then it probably set us back 2 or 3 games, if we're being really, really honest. But since that international break, I think we've only lost 2 Premier League games. Arsenal, again, last minute, and Brighton away the other week. So it has been a bit hit and miss, but I think the last few weeks we have shown a bit more form. I think the fact that we have done well in the Champions League, getting 6 points out of the first 3 games and getting to the Carabao Cup quarter-final after beating Tottenham on Wednesday night, which I'm sure West Ham fans were really happy about, just as much as the Newcastle fans. So, yeah, I take your point. It has been a bit hit and miss, but I think the last couple of weeks in particular, particularly that late winner against Fulham last week, has certainly helped Newcastle. And I think the start of something. I think there's a little bit of momentum. I think with I'm sure it's something I've read with won 6 out of the last 7 in all competitions. So it's certainly heading in the right direction, but we are probably a couple of wins behind where we want to be in the Premier League table right now, and hopefully we can start with capturing a few points at West Ham on Sunday.
Going back to the summer transfer window, were you happy with how it? I guess when it closed, were you happy with the end result? Because it felt like it was a bit of a wait for Newcastle to start doing business. And obviously, you missed out on a couple of what felt like key targets. James Trafford possibly being the biggest one that even he may regret now with what's happened at the Manchester City in the goalkeeping situation. And Isak just felt like it was dragging on and on. But at the same time, Wissa was dragging on and on as well. So by the end of the window, though, were you happy with the outcome and the players that you got in and the players that left?
I think when you look at the players that we brought in, I think on the whole, I was pretty happy with who we brought in. We've got Aaron Ramsdale, who, he was Arsenal's number 1 not too long ago, and now he's second choice for Newcastle. Played well against Spurs yesterday, it has to be noted. But we've improved in pretty much every position. Obviously, maybe the striker debate will always be a debate because Newcastle fans probably won't admit it, but Alexander Isak is still a very, very good striker. He's a world-class striker. It's just not working for Liverpool, which I'm really, really happy that it's not working for him at Liverpool. But defensively, we've recruited and getting a new centre-half in Malik Chow, who's been absolutely fantastic since he's arrived for £30 million. Midfield, we've probably upgraded with bringing in Jacob Ramsey for Sean Longstaff at this moment in time. I know Longstaff's done well at Leeds, but I think it was a move that benefited all parties. And you look at the fact that we've managed to bring in Johan Wissa and Nick Voltemade, we've still got a pretty strong squad all round. Yes, Wissa's not played yet, but he should be back in the next week or so. So we're kind of almost at full strength, and we've still got a very solid team.
Yeah.
You look at our midfield, you look at our attacking threat, and we're keeping clean sheets. We're a very, very difficult team to beat. So on the whole, I thought the transfer window was pretty good. I think when you look at the players that left, obviously the big one is Alexander Isak, but 125 to 130 million pounds for a player that didn't want to be at Newcastle anymore, kicked up a fuss, basically down tools and said, I'm not playing for anymore because I want to move. Yes, Newcastle probably wanted to keep the player, of course they did, but they probably couldn't have got much more from him in terms of the price. I think it was probably just about right for all parties, really. And look, we've saved £50 million on Nick Voltemade basically, and he started absolutely fantastic. So I'm looking at it as a general positive for the transfer window.
Yeah, I think you're better off in that striker department. Out of all the strikers, Isak, I think, is the best one out of them all. But then you've got Voltemade in and you've got Wissa in. And whichever one you want to look at as a replacement for Isak, let's just say it's Voltemade, fine. Wissa's a huge upgrade on Callum Wilson. And Osula is a year further along in his development. I think he's not a bad little player, actually. He's not little, he's quite tall, but I think there's a player there to work with in Osula. I think for a third choice striker, I think he's bloody good, actually. And if you were to look around the Premier League, I don't think there's too many clubs with a better third choice striker than what Newcastle United have got. So as a collective, I think you've actually upgraded. So while you've lost a world class striker, I think what you brought in, I think you're better off, because I think there was a few games last season when Isak was either out or not 100%, because I felt like there was a lot of games you risked him last season where he was maybe 80, 90%. And he was like, well, we have to play him because he's better than a 100% Callum Wilson. And I felt like you suffered when he was not fit or when he was not in form. The drop-off between Newcastle United with or without him was quite significant. And I think you've decreased that now. Well, you've got Waltemada in there, and once Whistler's fit, I think the drop-off between your first choice and second choice striker, there won't be much in it, if anything, to be honest with you. So I think you'd be better off where you are now compared to where you were. But in terms of the summer transfer window, do you think a large part of it was down to changes or disagreements at, let's just call it, boardroom level, because you've got a lot of, the director of football's leaving, and he's left now, and you've got a new one coming in. Did it feel just ill-prepared, perhaps, on Newcastle's part?
I think that's a fair comment. I think it was. I think we were very much underprepared. Obviously, we don't know what the situation was around about Paul Mitchell in terms of when he told Newcastle he was leaving. But as soon as it was made clear, I think it was pretty much after the last game of the season, pretty much the day after. So everybody knew pretty much that Paul Mitchell wasn't staying much longer. But that was a disastrous appointment, really, because his way of working to Eddie Howe's way of working, if we're being really, really honest, was completely different. And while Eddie Howe has the power in terms of getting the club back into the Champions League twice in the last 3 seasons, winning the Carabao Cup, and I suppose with having the fans on board as well, Paul Mitchell probably thought, well, I haven't got a chance here. Yeah. And I'm not saying Paul Mitchell's a bad, director of football. I think he's probably a very, very good operator, but maybe just the Newcastle United project wasn't for him. We've really replaced him with Ross Wilson, and obviously time will tell to see if he will do anything. But taking it back to your original point, yeah, we were massively, massively hamstrung. We were chasing everybody really, and it kind of became a bit of a laughing stock, didn't it? Because we were linked with Sesko, didn't get him. Linked with João Pedro, didn't get him. Linked with Trafford, didn't get him. Everybody was rejecting Newcastle, and that was awful because you're thinking, well, hold on, we've got a lot going for us. We've won,
and Bomo as well. Obviously went to Newcastle,
course.
And
it's so many players. Yeah, there's just so many players, and you're thinking, well, even though we've missed out on so many players, we've still brought in some decent players. And on the whole, look, if you had to rate it out of 10 in terms of bringing the players in, you'd have to say maybe a 7 or an 8. Only Lang has really not kind of hit the kind of track in terms of where we want them to be, but everything else has been pretty solid. But look, everything seems to be in place now. January, if Newcastle do try to go get somebody, you would think it'd be a lot more, kept behind closed doors, and hopefully it doesn't come out as much as it did, because it was coming out left, right, and centre, which was a little bit un-Newcastle since the new owners have come in.
Do you know what would make this video even better? If you're enjoying it with a beer, but not just any beer, a free beer. But fortunately, we're on hand to help with that, because all you got to do is go claim your free case of beer and pay the postage, which is £5.95. Sit back and relax, and Beer 52 will send you 8 delicious beers for you to try. But not only do you get 8 delicious beers, you also get 2 packs of snacks. And the latest Ferment magazine as well. Now, if you fancy a little bit of that, of course you do. Why wouldn't you? It's free beer. Go to beer52.com. That's beer52.com/hammers. The link's in the description below and the pinned comments as well. And once you're on the page, just click to claim your free case. Select if you want mixed beers or light beers. Pay the postage. Sit back, relax. And next time you're watching a Hammers Chat video or West Ham United, you can enjoy it with one of your delicious 8 free beers. Cheers. I remember speaking to you before you won the Carabao Cup, and you said to me, Eddie Howe has proven he can get us in the top 4. He's proven he can get us to Wembley, because you've got to the final and got beat. You said all he has to do now is prove that he can win a trophy and then qualify for Champions League football whilst competing in Champions League football, because that's the 2 things he had failed to do so far. Now he's ticked one of them off. He's won the trophy now. Coming into this season, has your, I don't want to say expectations, but your belief as a Newcastle fan, has that now gone up quite a bit? Because you can now go into the season thinking, he's proven he can win a trophy. So when the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup's there, maybe the Champions League with a little bit of luck, top 4 again. Is your belief increased a lot after winning the Carabao Cup last season?
That was a massive, massive hurdle. It was hanging on the football club, not necessarily Eddie Howe, but it was just hanging on the football club. Oh, you haven't won a trophy in X amount of years, and that's been done. Newcastle had their moment at Wembley, and I think unless you were a Sunderland fan or a Liverpool fan on the day, you would have been quite happy for Newcastle on that Sunday afternoon. However, when you look at, I suppose, Eddie Howe in terms of what he's done, he's pretty much done everything he can at Newcastle. He'll probably argue otherwise because he'll probably always feel that there's 1% of improvement to have on this team. But how far realistic can Newcastle go? Obviously last year he finished 5th and won a League Cup and got Champions League football out of it. I think Premier League is still probably the main goal in terms of finishing as high as possible. I think Champions League, Europa League has to be the minimum really for Newcastle, which I know is bizarre saying that because I think people that maybe don't support Newcastle think that's maybe quite unrealistic, but when you've had the taste of it for the last 2 seasons and you've got the squad that Newcastle have got, you actually think, well, this is actually achievable now. But I think there is still a gap between Newcastle United in terms of being consistently in the Champions League and being in a title race. I just don't think that's Newcastle right now. You're probably still looking at a number of years just because there's just a couple of teams that are just so dominant. You look at Arsenal, Manchester City in particular. I know Liverpool are having their moments, but they've still got a strong outfit. We're still quite far behind them, in my opinion. And I think that's where Newcastle are kind of almost stuck at a minute because, yes, they can spend money and try and get the right players, but realistically, how much further can they go? Can they finish 4th? Maybe, if Chelsea don't do as well, if Man United don't do as well. But then again, it's so competitive. It is so competitive and so difficult. But in terms of Eddie Howe, if he does anything extra, it is a cherry on top of the cake already. Because if he was to win an FA Cup or he does something extraordinary in the Champions League, that would be a different kettle of fish altogether.
I think the FA Cup is a realistic ambition for you. Because I think if you can win the Carabao Cup, you can win the FA Cup. I think the big teams, if you like, I think they take the Carabao Cup more serious now. I think it went through a few years where it was seen as an inconvenience and it was all about the title. Then I think when Man City started dominating the Premier League title, I think that made other clubs maybe take stock of the Carabao Cup a little bit more. And also Pep used to look at that as his first major trophy of the season. He always wanted to get the Carabao Cup. So the rest of the season went wrong. At least we've not finished the season empty-handed. And actually, last season was the point in case that he didn't win the Carabao Cup. He ended up empty-handed for the first time in like 9 years or something like that as a manager. So I think the Carabao Cup stock has risen a little bit in the eyes of some of those clubs. So I think, if you can win the Carabao Cup, I think there's no reason you can't go and win the FA Cup. Yes, you still need that little bit of luck in the draw. And if you get to the end of the season and you're in the FA Cup 5th round, say, but you're also 5th with a realistic chance of Champions League, you're maybe going to prioritise getting into that top 4 because of the financial rewards. I understand it. But I think Newcastle, I think it's maybe unrealistic to say win the Champions League. But I don't think it's unrealistic to say you could win the FA Cup. And I see that as a step up on the Carabao Cup. Even though I think teams take it similar in terms of seriousness, I do think the FA Cup is still way more prestigious than what the Carabao Cup is. But saying that, you're in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. I'll say it, so you don't have to say it. I think you've got a favourable draw there at home to Fulham. I don't think that's an offensive one. Fancy your chances to do it again?
Why not? Why not? I think that has to be the answer, really. I think when I was looking at the draw last night, I'm thinking home draw against anybody, even Man City or Arsenal or whoever, because they're going to make changes, but get us at home. And when I've seen that the last 2 teams were Newcastle and Fulham and we've got that home draw, it is an added bonus. I think Fulham fans would have probably been a little bit gutted because there's Brentford, Cardiff, even Crystal Palace to a lesser extent. We would think, well, if we can get them, you never know, we might have half a chance of making a semi-final. But look, I think we would have been secretly very happy with that. We still obviously realise that they're a Premier League team and they've still got some very good players. But I think Newcastle will fancy their chances of getting to a semi-final. Then after that, it's going to be tricky because you're looking probably Chelsea, City and Arsenal. But last year we played Arsenal over 2 legs and won 4-0. if it happens again, then that'd be absolutely fantastic. But I think for any club really, and we've noticed this in the last couple of years. I think last 3 years of the worst we've been is the quarterfinals in the Carabao Cup. I think that's where the competition almost starts, really, the quarterfinals, because let's say who's left. There's only there's obviously 7 Premier League teams and a League One team. Yes, you won Cardiff, but we got Fulham, which is probably either them or Brentford you would have been quite happy with at home. So yeah, it's a favourable draw, and you would expect Newcastle to get through, but we'll have to wait and see just after the Sunderland game, which will be an interesting one.
You must be looking forward to that. I know you had them in the cup. Was it last season you had them in the cup?
Season before?
Yeah, but it's been a while since you played them in the league, so I'm looking forward to it. As West, I'm looking forward as a West Ham fan. I enjoy games like that as a neutral. It sucks me in. I buy into everything. It helps not having a dog in the fight, because emotionally, I'm just excited, and that's that. Whereas you'll have the nerves and the excitement and the reward. And obviously, I think at the start of the season, you've been thinking, oh yeah, Sunderland, bring them on. But now you've seen how good Sunderland are. I wouldn't be surprised there's a bit of, oh, hang on a minute, these are good. It's not just Sunderland, it's a good Sunderland that's facing us. So funny enough, they were in the Carabao Cup. I think that's probably a team you would have wanted to avoid as well, because they're doing all right, actually. Neighbours.
They're not doing too bad. Look, let's joking aside. Look, to get 3 points at Stamford Bridge, regardless of how who you are, it's a very good result. But let's hope the bubble bursts.
Praise through gritted teeth from Jonny there. Right then, from your team to my team, what do you make of West Ham?
Oh my goodness. I think I've said that the last couple of times. To be honest with you, I feel so sorry for the West Ham fans. I really, really do. There's similar themes from maybe when we kind of got relegated first time under, I suppose, when you look at the Ashley era. I just think it's an aging team, and there's just a lot of weaknesses in that squad right now. And I look at that game against Brentford was absolutely horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Like I said, if I was a West Ham fan on that Monday night, I'd have wanted my money back. You were second all over the park. It was just really, really poor to see. And do you know, it's like, I feel like Newcastle and West Ham, I've said this before, are very similar. Good fan bases, similar history, really support the club, sleeping giants, if you like. And I think recently we've kind of been awake a little bit, where West Ham in the last couple of seasons, it's just not worked out. I thought Lopetegui would have worked. I thought Graham Potter would have worked, because you can see it from the outside going, do you know what? If these can get their stamp on it and get it right, then yeah, you can see West Ham competing for Europa League, Conference League places, because no cup competitions, in terms of European cup competitions, West Ham could have a real good go. But it didn't work with Potter. He'll argue that he didn't really get his players in the summer, maybe, but I just look at it now and I think, and this is no disrespect to Callum Wilson, because I love Callum Wilson. I really, really do. He was magnificent for Newcastle. Him and St. Maximin kept Newcastle up for 2 seasons, and he contributed into the Champions League runs we had. But Callum Wilson wasn't. Callum Wilson was off it for Newcastle for 12, 18 months before he left Newcastle, and that was through injury, lack of form, X, Y, and Z. And I think he was, I'm not going to say fortunate, but it wasn't far, I wouldn't go as strong as saying fortunate, but I'm not far off in the sense that he shouldn't have been getting going to a team like West Ham, if I'm being really honest. But he is the sort of character that you want at West Ham, if I'm being honest, because he will, he'll be up for the fight. As much as he has respect for Newcastle, he'll want to make sure he scores the winner against Newcastle on Sunday. But it's a real mess. The only thing I would say is that you look at Nuno's track record, he gets it right. Take away the Spurs situation, but that was just the wrong appointment at the wrong time. But he did a great job at Wolves, did an unbelievable job at Forest. He can get it right. But I think if he does, I think it'll be a bigger achievement than what he did at Wolves and Forest. Probably. It probably would be a bigger achievement, because you just look at the whole club right now. The owners are a disgrace. The owners of that football club are an absolute disgrace. And this is why I feel sorry for the West Ham fans. I really, really do. The ground is not a football ground. It's a great sporting ground, but it's not fit for Premier League football. They've literally not invested in the squad brilliantly this summer, and there's no reason why West Ham can't have done something this season. There's no reason why. They had the perfect excuse with no European football, and now you're thinking it's probably a flip of a coin whether you stay in the division or not, because the likes of Sunderland, Burnley, and Leeds have started well, and you're thinking, well, who are we going to replace? Leeds have started well, Burnley have started well, Sunderland are flying, which is painful to say, but West Ham are going to have to start doing something that they don't look like doing, and that's actually scoring goals and being able to defend. Because when you look at the first 2 goals against Leeds, my goodness, that they were really, really poor.
If I gave you a tenner now and said, go put money on 3 teams to go down, would West Ham be one of your 3?
Ooh, I know Wolves would definitely be one of the 3. I know it's still early in the season. I'm looking at Nuno's track record more than anything, and I think Nuno could probably just about keep you up. Whether I'd put a tenner on it, maybe a fiver, but I don't think I'd put a tenner on it.
My tenner, it's fine. Don't worry, you're not losing any money.
If it's your tenner, then go on then. No, in all seriousness, I just think Nuno's track record might get you out of it. And if you buy one in January, you might have enough time to get out of it. But it wouldn't surprise me if he went down, and that would be an absolute disgrace. It really, really would, because like I say, you fans deserve so much more than what you're getting right now. There's no. I hope in say 5-10 years time down the line, West Ham are in top half Premier League with a new stadium, or a stadium that's fit for purpose for Premier League football, with new owners, the right new owners, to actually take this football club where it can be. There's no reason when you look at it, it's got everything in place. You look at the other London Premier League clubs right now: Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs, Palace. Even like Palace right now, miles ahead. Brentford, miles ahead. And let's be honest, you should be competing with the likes of, like a Spurs. Let's be honest and going, look, we should be getting into those European places, but it's not on. It's not on, and I think I'm not surprised there's been protests. I think the fans are right to protest and try and get these owners out, because, like I said this last year. Like, how much longer can David Sullivan go? With the greatest of respect, he's not like he's a young man. He's like retirement age. He should really sell the club for the better for everybody. If he's a true fan who says it, that he says he is, he should be selling that football club, or he should be selling a stake of that football club. That's somebody that can make decisions for the benefit of West Ham. He should be doing that tomorrow, because it's not on. But and I do kind of have a little soft spot for West Ham, because it's not nice to see, because we've experienced it. We've experienced it for many years, and you just kind of almost have no hope, and you want hope for your football team. It's as simple as that.
Fantastic, Jonny. Thank you. Honestly, thank you. I've been away for the last few days. I've switched off from West Ham. You've just brought me back with a bump and a bang and a kick and everything. You said, this is how crap your club is right now. Here's a reminder. But honestly, absolutely agree with everything you just said. They're absolutely spot on. Sunday, how do you see this one going? I think I know what you're going to say, but how do you see it going?
Yeah, I am confident. And look, I was confident last season at St. James's, and we ended up getting beat 2-0 off West Ham. So it can happen. Different circumstances. Let's see what happens. But I just think with everything that's going on at London Stadium and the way that Newcastle are playing, I look at our midfield, and I look at, if you go with the same midfield of Irving and Souček, we'll run all over you. We really, really will. I think for Newcastle is, if we can get an early goal, how much will it change in terms of the home fans, and will they go, oh well, we expected it. I suppose the only thing I'm worried about is Jarrod Bowen. He's a very, very good player. It'll be interesting to see if they'll play him on the right or play him down the middle. I think from a West Ham perspective, you look at Dan Burn, and you can get past Dan Burn and do well. There's that argument, of course there is, but Dan Burn's been absolutely phenomenal. He's been superb. He was brilliant against Spurs yesterday. So that will be interesting. But I feel if Newcastle score the first goal, I think it should be a comfortable afternoon. And especially with all the negativity, I think it'll be really, really interesting to see how Newcastle approach it. But yeah, I'm confident Newcastle will get the job done. I think 2-0 Newcastle. I think if we're tough to, we don't concede a lot. We've got Voltemade on form. We've got Gordon on form. Jacob Murphy on form. So I think it's an opportunity for Newcastle to break their away day. Who haven't won away from home since Leicester last season. So I think if we don't beat West Ham away from home, there'll be quite a few shocked faces around the Premier League. But
and the London Stadium.
we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think 2-0 Newcastle.
Yeah, you've got a bit of a cheat code on Sunday with Walter Mad up front because our centre backs can't head the ball and won't head the ball. So having a 6'6" striker in the middle of the pair of them, he'll be all right. You've just got to get the service right to him, which I think you will, and he'll be fine in the middle of the box, getting his head on things. But Jonny, thank you so much. Pleasure as always. I'll catch up with you before the game at St James's Park. Then I'll probably have to miss at least one season. But hopefully I'll be back the season after that. We can
all I will say is I really do hope West Ham stay up in all seriousness because just like I say, they are a proper Premier League club. It's as simple as that. It is as simple as that. And I do think, whether it's Nuno or whether the ownership goes, they will be back to a place where your goal go. That's where we should be. And West Ham under the lights, whether that be at Upton Park or the Olympic Stadium, if it's a proper ground in terms of Premier League football, it's a tough place to go at any stage of the season. So after this weekend, yeah, let's see how he's got on.
Yeah, love that. Thank you, Jonny. If you guys at home have enjoyed it, please do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to Hammers Chat. If you'd like to follow Jonny on social media, I'll put a link to his profile in the description below. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll catch you in a bit.